Hi guys, and welcome to this tutorial on how to get started with AeroTURN. So in this demonstration I'm running AeroTURN on AutoCAD, and then I have the ribbon up here with the AeroTURN tools. And to get started we want to go to the settings, and we just want to make sure that under general that the units has been set to meters. And if we go to properties, then under aircraft envelopes, then we can select the different border lines or envelopes that we want to see on the simulations. And for this demonstration I want to make a simulation of an aircraft running from the runway and then into the taxiway. So for this demonstration I want to see, for example, it could be the nose gear, but I also want to see the main gears, and also I want to see the clearance distance of the main gear. So I'll just mark it and say OK. And then the next step is to determine the aircraft that I want to make the simulation of, and I will just go to aircraft. And now we can see that the aircraft has been grouped under manufacturer, and then I have a list of different manufacturers up here, and in this case it has been set to Airbus. And then down here in this part I can select the different type of or the different models of Airbus. Or if you know, for example, if you have the ICAO codes, in this case it will be the code letter F, and I want to select the Airbus 380 and just say OK. And when I want to make the simulations, then it's important that we place, in this case the center line will be placed in the same layer all along, and then I can use the tool called Auto Follow Simulation. I'll just mark it, and then I can just click on the starting point for the simulation. And when the center line has been placed in the same layer, I can just drag the aircraft along. And now we need to determine the type of simulation, and we can see in our case that it's according to the centered, meaning that the nose wheel will follow the center line. But if you select, for example, the offset, we can see that the aircraft will be offset. So it's important that you mark that you want to select the centered simulation and then just say OK. And we can see in this case we have the purple line, which will illustrate the border of the outer main gear wheels, whereas we have the blue line, which is the clearance distance. So if you just measure the distance, we can see it's 3.5 meters, and this is according to the demands from ICAO, so this is good enough. And I just want to show you, if you have made the simulation and let's say you have forgotten the clearance distance, then you can go back to properties, and in this case I will just unmark the clearance and I can say update, and then I will select the aircraft, and then we can see now the clearance has been removed. But if I just mark the clearance again and say update, then we can see it's now placed again. But if you have to make a lot of simulations with a lot of different aircraft, then I will recommend you to create a layer for each of the aircraft. So in this case, if I go to the home ribbon and select layer properties, then we can see, actually in this case I have selected the wrong layer, so this simulation right here is now placed in the layer 320, but I actually want to have it in the layer of 380. So now I have activated this layer, and let's see if I just go back to the AeroTURN ribbon and select properties, select update, and just select the aircraft, say OK. Then this simulation should be placed in the correct layer. But the advantage, if you place the different aircraft in the different layers, then you can turn on and off the different aircraft, and you can determine which of the aircraft will be critical when it comes to the fillet design of your taxiways.